here that don't have a fancy presentation, but so I'm not very everybody seen it. But anyway, as she read there, I started in 1976 at the quarry at a time when the industry was going through a transition. Prior to that, there wasn't a lot of thought put into the safety of the workers, and had a constant stream of folks going back and forth to hospitals and doctors' offices and everything. And so the management of the quarry decided that they would bring somebody in to help control the safety issues. And in the olden days, I like to say, when I graduated from Murray, I graduated with a degree in marketing. And that marketing degree included things like safety and health and personnel and a whole laundry list of things that now all have their own specialties. And you can get a degree in any of those. But anyway, I came to work over there, and believe it or not, we did get our safety in control. We drastically reduced the number of trips to the doctor's offices, and so we were a success in that. And just over the years, enjoyed quarry work and the mining and the people, and just tried to learn as much as I could about it. Eventually become the general manager of the quarry. I live in Calvert City, and I've driven 453 somewhere shy of 1 million times probably over those years. And it was kind of nostalgic to come over here this morning thinking, gosh, how many times have I done this? And a little earlier in the morning most of the time than today. But anyway, it's Livingston County was a huge part of my life for quite a number of years. And I always said I probably knew more people in Livingston County than I did in Marshall County, because I was here more than I was in Marshall County. But anyway, and I have to say this is remarkable what you guys have done as a historical society, and mark these things here. Unbelievable. It's been a treat to come in and see what you guys have done for Livingston County. It really is. It's very special. But anyway, I guess kind of start what little I know about Three Rivers and the quarry over there. Dickie asked me to speak. We'd had a long conversation on the phone and about some of the history, and I'll tell you what little I know about it. I think you've got this picture back in the things called the rock room. Yeah. This was a picture of the old Barrett quarry, which is right up the river from where Three Rivers is right now. Three Rivers, I don't think existed during when this picture was taken. I got this picture from a gentleman, and Dickie reminded me of his name after all these 50 odd years since I talked to this fella. His name is Russell Joyner, and he worked at that time as a night watchman at Three Rivers when I went to work over there. And he lived in a trailer on quarry property, down a little road that turned off the main road coming in there. I think that was called Bissell Bluff Road, if I'm not badly mistaken. I've lost a lot of brain cells between then and now, I promise you. But anyway, went over. I'd go over and visit with him during the day, just to check on him. And he's loved to tell stories. He pulled this old picture out, and he said, if memory serves me, it was 1929. And he went to work there with his father. And his father was they were on the drill team. And you probably can't see it from back there, but at the end of each one of these tracks, up against the face there, they called it a room. And each room had the drill team was his father, and he his father swung the sledgehammer and he helped the star bit. And of course, when they did that, the old star bits, you may be familiar with all this, but you'd hit it with a sledgehammer, then you'd turn it. You hit it with a sledgehammer, then you'd turn it. And they'd drill these holes and shoot the rock out on the ground. And then the people that control these rooms, the miners, would come in and hand load a cart with the rock. And anyway, they'd pull the little carts by mules over to the loading facility, which is where the towboat is, where the building is here. And he told me that one of the things that he said they worked through all kinds of weather, and said the only time they'd ever stopped work if it was started sleeting or getting real cold, getting icy, the superintendent would yell, "Boys, let's shut her down. The weather's too bad for the mules." And when they brought the little cart over to the point here, dump point, they received a brass tag. And at one time when I first went over to Three Rivers, I had a whole wire ring of those brass tags, and I have no idea what happened to them over the last 50 years. But they may be some. I seriously doubt it, but it's possible that they might have survived in some desk drawer at the quarry. I don't know. But anyway, but they got one of those tags, and you had a quota. And I don't remember what it was, 20 loads or 25 loads. And if you didn't get your you lost your job. Oh, and he said there was always one or two great big old bulky guys that could just outwork anybody on the planet, and they'd always get more than their quota, and they'd sell their tags to people that run short. And the cost of the tag to keep your job was one tag, was 1 day's pay. And he said there was an old tree out at the entrance road that every day there'd be half a dozen or so guys sitting on that tree waiting for a job, knowing that somebody was going to fall out that day. They might get a job. But anyway, they would take those carts down there, the little stiff-legged crane here would pick them up and swing them out over the river and dump them onto the barge. And if you've noticed, the barges, you can't really see it from here, but the barges looks perfectly symmetrical. All the material on it is perfectly square. And they had a skill or a craft at the quarry that would build a rock fence around the edge of that barge. And then they'd dump the rock inside of that rock fence. It was so high and so long and everything. Dump it all in there and hand level it. And they sold the rock by the cubic yard because these barges were wooden. And they absorbed the water and dried and got wet. And so there was no way to use displacement tables like they do on the steel barges now. Because so much rock will displace so much water, and the barge will sink that much, so you can, you're selling it by the ton, how much the difference between unloaded and loaded drafts are. So anyway, then when they'd take they'd load these barges, a lot of the crew would get on the boat because they had quarters on there. They'd go down the river and they would hand place this rock called riprap on the riverbank to build a revetment to help control erosion on the riverbank. Could go to Memphis or Vicksburg or wherever it was. And they had two sizes of rock they sold. One size was called man size, and the other size was called two-man riprap. And obviously the reason for that is the man size was what one man could place by himself, and the other size was what took two men to replace. The man size, top size, weighed 125 pounds. Wow. The two-man was 250 pounds. So a little different effort than what they'd have to put through now. But anyway, I've always felt this is fascinating to have this old picture The old towboat there, he told me, I don't know this is a fact, was a Barrett line boat. And he told me that the Barrett line eventually became kind of the root company of Ingram Barge Line. So technically that's the truth. Then this Ingram goes back to that long time ago. So anyway, I always thought that was one of the best pictures I ever saw. But that quarry existed. I don't know when it finally ceased operations, but I guess because of the fact that they were shipping rock downriver for Corps of Engineer construction jobs, the Jones family, and what was Mr. Jones's name, Dickie? They called it Smooth Mouth.
Smooth Mouth.
Yeah, that's the only thing I ever knew.
Smooth.
Yeah, but that was their family farm, and I guess he saw the. If any of you have known any of the Joneses and the Jones kids, Jimmy Jones for one of them, they were promoters, and he saw the value of the stone there, and started trying to get somebody to put a quarry in. This was probably in the 50s in that neighborhood, and he found some people that out of Southern Illinois came in and started the quarry. And I think actually, as the story goes, even when the Barrett quarry was going on, they mined a little rock along the riverbank where it was exposed. Never really started a pit, but there, where one of our loading docks was up there, you could tell that there had been some effort at one point in mining there. And it actually, when I went to work there was an old stiff leg derrick crane like is in that picture down on the riverbank that they had used at some point in time. But anyway, I think the quarry, if memory serves me, operated under two different groups out of Southern Illinois, and they both went bankrupt at various times. And anyway, in the mid to late 60s, the last one from up there was bankrupt. And the bank that was handling the bankruptcy was obviously trying to sell it. And they were contacting producers and contractors around the country to get any interest. Well, at that time, Vulcan Materials Company, I'm not even sure they went by Vulcan at that time. They might have been still Lambert Brothers quarries. That was the base company for Vulcan Materials Company. And they were based in Birmingham, Alabama, and where Vulcan is now. And they heard about the quarry and got some interest, and so they sent a team up here to look at the quarry to see if they'd be interested in buying it. But somehow or another, they got confused and went to the old Barrett quarry instead of the Three Rivers quarry, and didn't like what they saw. And so they went back to Birmingham and said they didn't want the quarry. But at that time, there was a contractor down there. His name was John Harbert, Harbert. He was a highway contractor. And he had gotten, along about that time, the interstate highway system was starting to be built. And he was, needless to say, making a fortune building highways in the South, and became one of the largest interstate construction companies in the country. But anyway, he, for some reason, he was friends with the Lamberts, and they said, well, we saw that quarry up there. We don't want it. If you want it, you can have it. You can buy it. And so he came up here and he went to the right quarry and thought he liked what he saw, and so he bought it. And that's where Three Rivers Rock Company started by John Harbert. Harbert Construction Company. And anyway, he operated it as Three Rivers for, well, up until it was sold to Amoco Oil Company, Standard Oil of Indiana. And that was about 1981 or 2, something like that. I remember exactly. But anyway, he never did buy a pound of rock from us. He never used a single rock that came out of that quarry because it just wasn't any way to get it to where he was doing his highway work. It was strictly a river construction quarry. And anyway, just an interesting sideline about John Harbert. So I always think this is fascinating, but he, at one time when he sold the company, John Harbert was the largest coal leaseholder in the state of Kentucky. He'd gotten big in the coal mining in eastern Kentucky and actually invented what they call the mountaintop removal mining system, which most environmentalists hate, but it was a very effective way to mine coal. And of course, obviously the reason Standard Oil bought Harbert and got Three Rivers was because of those coal leases. They had a minerals division, Amoco Minerals, that they wanted to be in the coal mining business. And I don't know if John Harbert was one of the smartest people on the planet or one of the dumbest, but anyway, obviously was one of the luckiest because to mine those coal mines up there, it took these big electric front shovels. They're, big as this courthouse actually, and they're electric, and you have to run power into them, which cost many millions of dollars even in the 1980s. And he had borrowed $50 million to buy two of these shovels and put in the power lines to run them. Dickie's familiar with all these things. And anyway, it's kind of hard to believe in telling some young kids about interest rates and most folks, the judge's age, probably never saw an interest rate above 3% until just in the last few months. But anyway, he borrowed $50 million at 3+ New York Prime. And that New York Prime, when he borrowed that, was 22%. And so can you imagine going to bed at night on $50 million and paying 25% interest? Well, about 3 months later, he sold it to Standard Oil in Indiana, and they inherited all of that. So obviously, it's either genius or very lucky. And of course, they had no interest in the quarry. Standard Oil didn't, but I think he decided it was a good opportunity to get out of the mining business altogether. And he said, well, we're not going to do the deal unless you take Three Rivers too. And so they took Three Rivers and operated it in their Cypress minerals division, which I've got a belt buckle over here that came from Cypress. I also have a Three Rivers belt buckle that if you folks have any interest in displaying that in your rock room, I'll be glad to donate both of those to you.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Because they'll just set, and I'll just put them back in the same drawer I got out of them, and somebody when they come clean my house out, after I'm dead, they'll say, where'd these come from, So anyway, you can have them. Also, there's a keychain and a little tie pin if you'd like those, that you have those too. So anyway, again, a note.
I would appreciate
Yeah.
it if you'd write down some of that story that you told about that picture, because I think that would help Lola.
Okay, I'll try. I'll do that. And I've got your email address.
Yeah.
It might take me a few days to do all that, but I'll do that.
Most of us have not heard that history at all.
Yeah.
That was good.
Well, that's like I say, a lot of things I don't remember, names mostly, but for some reason that story fascinated me, and it stuck with me after all these years.
You don't have any old mining equipment or anything, do you?
No, ma'am.
We've not been able to go.
One time, down on the riverbank, I'm sure it's all gone now, I know it is, but there was a remnants of a couple of those old carts that the mules pulled at that Barrett quarry, just the frames, because when they were basically just wheels that fit on those tracks, small gauge tracks, and then a frame that a wooden box set on. And when they pulled down to the derrick, they'd hook on the corners of that wooden box and swing the box off with a cart frame over onto the barge and dump it in there. But anyway, I'm sure all of that's long since disappeared.
Sure.
And there was, I remember, I loved to explore around there. Of course, there was between the Barrett Quarry and the Three Rivers Quarry was an old county quarry years and years and years ago. And I don't know any of you grew up around here, but that was called the Blue Hole. And it was a constant job keeping kids run out of the Blue Hole because they had to come across the quarry property to get in there, and that was a no-no. But anyway, I don't even know if it may have been filled in by now, but anyway, there was some old scrap from the old Barrett Quarry around that old Blue Hole. But again, that's 50 years ago, and that's long gone from now. But anyway, and if you could go over and dig in the dumps on the old Three Rivers, I'm confident you could find some pieces of old trucks and loaders buried over there. But that's not, nobody's supposed to know that. But anyway, over the years, after, of course, Cypress or Seminole of Indiana and Amoco Minerals took control of the quarry, operated in the Cypress Minerals Division, and our office was in Englewood, Colorado, and the Cypress. This was their only real limestone quarry. They had a lot of calcium carbonate quarries in the south, which made the high calcium limestone, and they produced fine ground dust for different products, just kind of like Freedom did when we bought them. They had a dust plant over there. They mined a lot of clay, and they mined talc, just different industrial minerals from around the country. Matter of fact, back in January 2020, had a client contact me to come out to El Paso, Texas to look at the possibility of helping them get into the aggregate business, or what they would need to do. And they were mining talc on one of the Cypress Minerals properties that they owned out in West Texas, which is the first time I'd ever been to West Texas. It takes you about 5 seconds to see all the scenery in West Texas, I can tell you. But anyway, after we endured Cypress Minerals Company, and I say endured, it was a struggle. Then a company named Dervaux Basic Materials bought Three Rivers. And Dervaux was based out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. That one time was the largest design construct company in the world, and they also built boats and barges. There's a number of towboats still operating called the Viking class, Dervaux Viking class towboats out there. They had a facility on there's an island just in the Ohio River before you get to Pittsburgh called Neville Island, and there's a lady, you're familiar with Neville Island.
I've been there many times.
Okay,
They have a big picnic there for all the Dervaux employees.
Okay.
We lived up that way, but we moved around. My dad worked for Dervaux for 40-something
Oh, okay.
years, retired.
Yeah. Well, they were a major player in
Yeah, they did.
and at one time at the shipyard there on Neville Island, they could launch a brand new hopper barge every day of the year. They were just that big operation. And anyway, they no longer do that. They're no longer a Dervaux. But they were big in the mining business in that part of the world also, and dredging sand and gravel out of the Ohio River. And they also were down in the office that I worked, when they owned the quarry that I worked for, was out of New Orleans. And
Wait, that's where Dad He went from Pittsburgh to.
Okay, all right.
And we were down there for a while.
Okay, all right. Well, they were big in the oyster shell dredging in New Orleans because that was for years and years and years the primary construction material in that part of the world to build roads or parking lots or bases for, sub bases for building the stuff was oyster shells. They dredge out of the Lake Pontchartrain and out of the Gulf of Mexico, and it was a pretty lucrative business. When I first went to work at Three Rivers in 1976, we had a gentleman that was president of the company. His name was Joe LeBlanc, and he was from Abbeville, Louisiana, originally. And he, I think, desperately wanted to get back to Louisiana. And I don't know who lives there now, but he built a house kind of where the old hotel was, right before you got to the bridge. I think it was called the Old Hotel. There was a restaurant there. But, yeah, yes, that's exactly right. Right behind it, on top of that hill, that house up there. I don't know who lives there now, but Joe built that house when he was at the quarry. But they called him the Raging Cajun because it could get exciting around the quarry at times. So that's when he got angry. But anyway, in his quest, I think, to get back to Louisiana, again, at that time, the state of Louisiana in there, if you're familiar with construction, Dickie is, every state has a standard specifications book, and they have in there what kind of rock they want, there's the sizes they want, the kind of steel, the guardrails, the seeds for the, if they grass anything, just everything that the state will buy for highway and bridge construction is in that standard spec book. Well, the state of Louisiana had one, but it did not have any limestone products in it at all. It was all oyster shell or gravel, sand and gravel. And so he come up with the idea that I'm kind of rambled here, excuse me, but all these quarries that were up here, the Reed Quarry and the Three Rivers Quarry, primarily here because to produce riprap, to produce the big stone used to help revet the rivers, build the current controlled dikes in the rivers and all that kind of stuff. Well, in that process, you have to crush it, have to size it. Well, you have a lot of stuff left over, and we crushed that into the aggregates, stuff like your base material that you'll see them put on under the asphalt stone, concrete stone, things like that. Well, they didn't have any specs for that in Louisiana, so he started working to try to get that developed, and he started a company, the Harvard at that time, started a company in Baton Rouge called Louisiana Limestone. And we had our own towing company called Harcon Barge Company. And so we would tow the material down there, put it on sales yards, and try to retail sell it to anybody that'd buy it. And it was a struggle at first to get anybody to buy it because if it was a state job, you couldn't use limestone on it. So we had to go through the process of getting the state convinced that limestone would work in that for what they need down there. And then also at the same time, the environmentalists kind of started crippling them on dredging the oyster shells, and the deposits beginning to run out. But anyway, the timing was perfect, and we got the limestone approved and had a series of yards down there. So we'd ship rock from up here down to Baton Rouge and Lake Charles, Louisiana, Houma, Louisiana, and all these places you hear about when they start talking about Louisiana hurricanes,
Right. Oh my God.
Yeah. So anyway, that's how that all kind of developed, and some of that's in there. I've got a brochure up here, and has a number of things in there. It shows one of the tows loaded going down the river. I'm sure everybody's seen a number of these here lately. Got a picture of where a map showing what the goal was to get it down south, and some pictures of the quarry in operation. And this little fella right here, I don't know if anybody remember Hardy Gentry. Yeah, he was a piece of work, I'm here to tell you. He was the quarry superintendent, and of course I was charged when I first got there as personnel director. Well, I think we probably had 70 or 80 employees at that time, which was a pretty good number of employees for this part of the world. And Hardy I'd hire 4 new truck drivers, and Hardy would fire 5. So it was a never-ending process. I don't know if he didn't like them or he just wanted to keep me busy. I'm not really sure what was going on, but it was a challenge. And a couple of pictures of Mr. LeBlanc there, and the other gentleman is Don Thompson. Dick, you remember Don? Don's my father-in-law. They're both passed away now. But anyway, I may have one more of these. If I can find it, I will get one of these to you for your rock room. But I hate to get rid of it because picture of my wife's father's in there.
Maybe we can get a copy or something.
Yeah, but I think I've got another one, so I'll dig through my archives and come up with that. But
Tim, while you're doing that, can I put in?
yeah,
You talking about Abbeville. When I was in Fredonia, we were working on a deal, stock and ag down in Abbeville.
Yeah.
And I made a trip down there. And the fellow's name was Bill Fournier. Well, I go in the office, pulled up there, and there said a truck from Livingston County. And of course, that was the Ingram facilities.
yeah,
Well, probably somebody from up here, down there doing something like that. Thought of that. So I went in and the lady said, I told her, oh yes, you just have a seat. Mr. Fogg, you'll be with you in a few minutes. And I said, okay. I sat down and opened up the Equipment magazine, opened it up, and there was Joe LeBlanc's picture. He was a cat dealer down at Lafayette.
yeah. That's after he left.
Right.
Yeah.
So I sat there a while and I looked up, there was this fellow coming down the hall, and it was our judge's granddaddy, Boise Moon.
Oh, me.
Moved off down there.
Well, that doesn't surprise me a bit. I knew boys.
He walked around and what?
Yeah. Hey.
Yeah.
You're fine. You're fine. So anyway, that's after DeVoe. Well, when they bought us, they got rid of our towing company. But anyway, for some reason or another one of those bad mistakes you have to endure. But then they operated us for a number of years, and then Martin Marietta Aggregates bought DeVoe out, all their assets in the river business, and we operated until let's see, in Martin Marietta, I think that changed about 2000 and it's about 2020, something like that. Then Lafarge acquired the river assets from Martin Marietta, and I worked for Martin Marietta until November of 1999, and tell everybody I turned 50 years old and had a midlife crisis, only I changed jobs instead of wives. And it was almost as disastrous as that. But and went to work for Patton Tully and actually started placing rock on the river that I produced and sold for so many years. That's what we did. And I don't know, go back a little, I thought something a while ago, just to give everybody a little reference why these quarries up here are so important to the rock business down south and why all this rock goes down there. Well, if you look at a map of the United States and you go to Cape Girardeau, Missouri, and you draw elliptic lines down like this, all the way to the Gulf Coast, all the way over to Mobile, Alabama, one of them, all the state of Mississippi, practically half of the state of Arkansas, most all the state of Louisiana, and into over almost to Dallas, Houston areas, Texas. It was called the Mississippi Embayment. All that was water at one time. And so there's probably limestone deep, deep, deep down in the ground, but most all that's alluvium, just fill from the decades and decades ago. So when you leave Smithland, Kentucky, right out here at the end of the Cumberland River, there is no more rock south of here through all that area. Now, of course, there's quarries up, and if you've ever been up down I-55 in southeast Missouri, when you top of a little hill and come down by Benton, Missouri, you enter the Mississippi Delta, and there's no rock from there on down. And there's a few quarries on the upper Mississippi. One I still do some work for in my little company. But that's the reason that these quarries are so important, why they've survived as long as they have, why they continue to survive and prosper, although there's not as much of the river construction work being done now as there was in the 50s, 60s, and 70s and 80s, because the work's been done. And mostly now it's just to maintain the construction projects that are out there. And of course, what again, I may just be kind of wandering around here, but a lot of what that rock was used for was to control erosion on the banks and to build dikes out into the river, to direct the current into the center of the river, to keep it scoured out so you don't have to come in and dredge. And it keeps the navigation, their navigation aids is what they are. Most of those that are in critical locations have been built. Occasionally they'll contract to build a new one every now and then, but most of it now is just maintenance work because they'll have to be topped off and re-leveled again, and just maybe extended a little bit, or just repair work done to them. And that's where most of the rock comes from going. But so a lot of the rock now is going into the aggregate part of it, which is the base material, the concrete stone, the asphalt stone, and all that kind of stuff. That there is none in all the rock that's used in Memphis, Tennessee has to come from up here. All the rock that's used in Vicksburg and Natchez and Baton Rouge and New Orleans all has to come from somewhere else. And they're all prosperous communities, and so they use a lot of material. So, and it's the rule of thumb that we always use in estimating things, that if you look at a population of an area, say, say New Orleans has 1 million people, that if they have 1 million people, that they'll use 10 tons of limestone per person. So that market amounts to 10 million tons annually. And there's some give and take on that, but that's kind of the overall average, and the rule of thumb is to calculate, if you look at a market, what the amount of limestone you'd need. You don't think about that, but but there's a lot of rock used, and particularly down there, because the old ground's so rotten that here you want to build a parking lot in Livingston County, you peel off the grass and put down 6 inches of rock and you're good to go. You go down there, you peel off the grass and put down 10 feet of rock, and you might still be good to go. You know, this would happen before I started, well, right about the time I started working there, because they were going to do a runway extension at the New Orleans International Airport. And of course, it being a federal project, they could use limestone, even though it was in the state of Louisiana when they'd inspect limestone. So I don't know if it came from Three Rivers or it came from Vulcan, it doesn't really matter, but they delivered all this limestone down the river, and they unloaded it, took it over and stockpiled it at the New Orleans airport. And it was 25, 30,000 tons of rock, which is a great big pile. Well, it sat there and it sat there, and all of a sudden they started noticing about, as far as from here to the river, out in the middle of Airline Highway, the road started rising and cracking. And what was happening, a little lesson in soil hydraulics, that weight was pushing down and it found the easiest path, and it was right under the middle of the highway. And it started displacing itself, that weight, out in the middle of the road. So they had to move all that rock and come in and repair the highway. There's been a lot of those hard lessons learned in South Louisiana. But it's been kind of it's been an awful fun business. That's the reason I'm 75 years old and I still work every day in it. So I love it. And if I had a better memory, I could, I'd like to write a book sometime about all the characters, including Dickie Berry, that I've encountered in my almost 50 years career in this industry. It's been a lot of fun, and again, a lot of great people, and a lot of them are right here in Livingston County too. But when I first started in it, most of them, all of them were good to me and taught me what I think I know today. I don't know what that might all be, but I still, some of it I can share and some of it I can't probably. But anyway, it's been a great industry, and I hope some of this information has helped you in your historical search today. And if anybody's got any questions, I'll try to come up with an answer. Okay.
Thank you
All right.
so much. Yeah. Y'all want to chat with him afterwards? I'm gonna go ahead and dismiss, and those of you who can stay and go to the courthouse, we need you to help get the newsletters out.